That was quick. Hi, everybody. Sorry we're late. Let me go live on Instagram here and then we'll get started. I should probably get rid of this cough drop. It's going to be annoying. Okay. Hi. We're here. It's Friday. It's been a couple weeks since we've done a Friday live call, so I'm glad everyone is here. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. I've got a sick little one at home that made everything just slower today. But we're here, and today's topic kind of came out of what we did last week. So introductions. Hi. I'm Leah McDermott, founder of Bridge Academy and You're a Natural Learner. Every Friday we hop on here and we do a live call to chat about whatever topic has come up a lot in my community, in Bridge Academy, with just conversations. And we haven't had a live call in 2 weeks. Well, we did last week technically, but the week before I was traveling. And then last week, all week, I filmed the Unschooling 101 series. So you might have been around for that or got your hands on that. Currently, the only way to get that is to have purchased the Pay What You Wish Grow Your Natural Learner course, which is still available. I just left it there as a Pay What You Wish. We just aren't promoting it. So if you find a link somewhere in email and you want to get that, you still can. We will have the Unschooling 101 up for sale by itself, probably by Monday. We just have to put it all together on the drive folder and everything. But one of those days was supposed to be talking about unschooling myths, and what we ended up doing was deciding to make it more of a community effort, which all of those posts are going to start coming out next week as well. So next week's going to be really fun. We're going to be sending you clips out on social media. We're going to be putting out clips from the Unschooling 101 series and posts around myths with unschooling, specifically to get your feedback. So make sure you look for those. But the way that we gathered what those posts were going to say was by sending out an email to my list and asking, what are those myths that you come up against most often? And obviously, but I don't know, like surprisingly, but not. The most common one still is, what about socialization? And like the longer I do this work, the more baffled I am that that's still something that people say. So, I can just brush it off. It's easy 20 years into this to just be like, okay, socialization. But if it is still so prevalent and it's still something that people are asking and having questions about, then there's a reason. And so today's topic is socialization in unschooling, or socialization in general, because I think it's really important. And as you know, if you've ever watched any of my videos or you followed me for a while, I like to teach the theory and the understanding of something and then give you actions, because I think those two things together really matter. Like, it's important to have information, but it's also really important to have something to do with that information. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go ahead and just talk about this. Why is this still so prevalent? Like, what is it about socialization that people are still so obsessed with and curious about? Like, that's the thing, right? Why I want to homeschool. What about socialization? Like, immediately that's still the myth. So why are we still having that conversation? Like, in a world that's so tech driven, so many people have friends online all around the world. Like, we're too connected sometimes to other people, and yet there's still just this like fear. So why is it there? And then we're going to talk about let's talk about it. Let's be real here and honest. So my hope is that this video not just helps you like feel seen and heard, but also gives you that information that you can share with others. So if you have a partner or a family member who is bringing this up and wants to know more about it, this is a good video to send to them. So I'm going to get into what is it about public school socialization that is failing? Why does that not work? Why is it harmful? What actually happens in real socialization? So some real theory behind this. And then we're going to get into some actions. If you're homeschooling, if you're unschooling, how do you make sure your kids are socialized? And then to wrap it up at the end, we're also going to talk about ways or like phrases that you can have in your arsenal to address those questions when they come up from people. Like, depending on how that question is being asked, I want to give you that supportive, not just like, how do I make sure my kid is getting the socialization that's needed, but also when I'm presented with that question, what do I say? What's the easiest way to like move on from that conversation? And I think that's helpful anyway, since this is still like the number one myth of unschooling and homeschooling. But as we're moving into the holiday season, we're going to be spending more time with some, potentially judgy family members. And it's just really helpful to have those like prepared phrases. So we're going to end with that. And we'll end the teaching part with that. And then, of course, every Friday, my families from Bridge Academy get to, submit their questions, and I'll take those at the end of this call as well. So let's get started with like a definition, which I know is very cliche, but I think it's important to understand, what do we mean when we say that? Like, when I say, what about socialization? What is that person even asking? Like, what is that? So socialization means learning how to be a person in the world. Okay, that's socialization. How do I exist in the world around me as a human? And that is everything from like communication, emotional regulation, empathy, collaboration, problem solving, conflict resolution, boundary setting. Like, think about your connection and your engagement with those around you in the world around you and how you engage with that. That's socialization. So when we really get clear on defining it, then we can immediately start to see like, okay, well, is the only place to learn that inside a classroom? And is the best place to learn that inside a classroom or inside a school? And most people would immediately be like, oh, well, when you put it that way, no, it's not. But let's be really like, why? Okay. So first, let's talk about, why is this a myth? And for the record, this chat today will be even more like resonant for you if you did watch the Unschooling 101 videos. If you didn't, definitely don't go away. Like, still watch this, but participating in those conversations I had last week will just like, all of this is intertwined very much together. Okay. And maybe we'll do a video like this on every myth. That might be really helpful. But anyway, okay. Why is this still here? Why are people still saying this? I have so many conversations all of the time still. What about socialization? All right. So the reason that this is still prevalent, that this is still a myth, is because school became the normal, right? That's what you did. The definition of normal for a kid in our world today, and for the last 50 years-ish, has been, you go to school. And that has just, as we talked about in Unschooling 101, has just permeated all parts of humanity and our upbringing and our engagement with the world. So if everyone goes to school, then that's school equals socialization, right? It's just like this subconscious conditioning that the way you learn to be with other people is through this normalized systemic method of everyone growing up together through this trauma, right? That's what we have just, it's never been a definition of socialization that it's learning how to be a person in the world or being a person in the world. It is just keeping in line with that norm. That's what you do. Every kid goes to school, so school equals learning, school equals socialization. It's just a thing that subconsciously as a society we have accepted. And anytime you remove yourself or your child from that norm, from that factory line, from that assembly line, anytime you step off of that, something, like, people are going to think that something is missing. Okay, well, your kid's not getting something. And socialization is an easy target. That's an easy thing to say. And I think that as I did research for this and prepared for this conversation today, I realized something because without digging into this, as I kind of started off, it seems so odd to me that that's still something people are saying because realistically, we should be fully understanding that that's not the only way to socialize with people. However, I actually now see that it's becoming more of a prevalent thing. People are gripping onto what about socialization, not because we haven't gotten over it, but because it's the only thing left that they can say is good about public schools, because it's a well-known fact that kids aren't being prepared for what's coming next, that there's all kinds of issues with the system, that they're not prepared for a job, they're not going to leave and get factory work. Many kids aren't going to college, they're not prepared for it. Test scores in the US are abysmal. So I think collectively we've kind of started to realize that maybe public school isn't great for a lot of the reasons we talked about in Unschooling 101 last week, but also because this is it now. All we have left now is, well, at least they'll socialize. At least they'll learn to be with other people and other kids. So I think that's probably why it's not just that it's still something that people are saying, but that we're like clinging on to that as like the last bastion of hope for the public school system. Like, well, at least they'll be socialized. And it's a myth that is just rooted in conformism, right? Just this systemic conformity. But also, it's happening because unschoolers and homeschoolers socialize differently. So, somebody just made a comment, public school offers something not unlike the shared trauma of hazing, and we are definitely going to talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up. We're definitely going to go there. Unschoolers, just when socialization happens differently in the real world. So it's really hard for someone that is very trapped in the mindset of this is the way, this is the norm, you do the norm, even if it's traumatic, even if it sucks, like that's just what everybody does and we get through it together. And again, I'm going to keep pointing back to it. We talked about that too last week, but it's really hard to see something that is different as equally or more valuable. And the way that we socialize naturally as humans is not forced. It's interest driven, it's chosen, it's mixed age, it's real life. We socialize when we choose to and when we need to, and we learn and develop skills through those experiences and through modeling that we see from those around us. And that doesn't happen on a predictable, standardized timeline for everybody. And as we talked about last week, standardization is the name of the game in a public school system. And if something can't be standardized or doesn't act in a standardized way, then it is immediately considered a problem or a flaw or something to be othered, whether that is a trait or an experience or a person as a whole. And so since the real way to socialize, as unschoolers do, because we are existing in the belief that all life is learning and that's how we engage in the world around us in a very natural, developed way, that looks so different from what's happening in school. And I shared recently on my social media that my husband had actually been asked by somebody, how will your kids learn to deal with bullies if they don't go to school? So like, what a crazy question. And yet so permeated, so conditioned as a part of our society that you have to go through this hazing, as someone mentioned here, experience that you're missing something if you don't go through that, or that you're flawed to go through that experience differently. So that's another reason that this myth kind of sticks around, because even though every year there's more and more people choosing to homeschool, choosing to unschool their kids, so you would think by default this myth would be busted purely by numbers, by growth, by change, by what we see around us. Because that looks different, it's not seen as valuable. So that's another reason that this kind of like sticks around. And then the other major reason that this is still a myth is because adults that are unhealed from their trauma project their wounds onto children. So again, as we talked about last week, many adults are walking around, most adults are walking around with these educational wounds, these school traumas that are not even addressed or acknowledged, let alone, on the process of healing them or working through them. And so when that happens, we we don't, if we don't acknowledge or recognize or heal those traumas, we just project those wounds onto others, especially those more vulnerable than us, as something that they need to go through as a growing experience, a way to, learn, learn to be resilient is a big one, or just that it's just a thing you do. It's not traumatic, it's just normal. And so if a lot of us are walking around with these unhealed traumas, and think about how many adults, or you think of your experience even in school, like most people don't fall in this like perfectly socialized bubble. How many adults were punished as kids for being too talkative? How many were labeled as like shy or won't engage in class, right? We have all of these. Anything outside of this tiny little bell curve of normal, of perfectly socialized, which just means easily behaviorally managed, right? Like school's not worried about socializing your kids. They're worried about behavior management. So unless the child is just like sits quietly and does all their work and pays perfect attention, but engages at the perfect amount of times in the right times, meaning, raising their hand and asking the right questions and engaging in this perfect little robot kind of way, everyone that falls outside of that, which even that child is still walking away with traumas, because there's people pleasers, right? Well, they learn how to perform the right way, and so they do it. It's not necessarily always natural. And so if we have just gone through that experience and we haven't done anything to recognize the problems with it and what it's done to us now as adults, and how we have learned how to socialize, how to be a person in the world, then we just project that onto our kids, and we think that, well, it has to be normalized. They have to do it that way. We don't realize that our situation, even though something is normal, doesn't make it right or true or positive, that we want something better for our kids, that what we had wasn't ideal. It wasn't helpful. Millennials especially are some of the most like poorly socialized groups of people, like text me, don't call me, don't come to my door unannounced. Like we have all these traumas around socialization, because that's really the generation where schools started to shift towards just like so much standardization, so much force, so much pressure, and it's just rippling now through generations. So those are the reasons why I believe the myth is still so prevalent, still coming up. So let's talk about the realities of it now. Why is this a problem? Why is public school socialization, or what we call socialization in public schools, so harmful? So number one, it's forced and it's false. And this is an easy thing to say. It's not, a theory. It's just the reality. Kids in a public school are not grouped by their interest. They're not grouped by choice. They're not grouped by maturity. They're not grouped in any kind of authentic way. The groupings are standardized. They are grouped by birth date, by age, often by their last name, how it falls on alphabetical order, their geographical location, which almost always is synonymous with socioeconomic status. They are grouped based on these like preset standardized things that the child has no control over. And that is not real life. That's not true socialization. That is a false reality of what the world is. And it is forced. Social time is a myth anyway. How much time does your child actually have to socialize in school by choice? Maybe like the few minutes that they get to school before the bell rings. maybe lunchtime. I can tell you, having worked in elementary schools though, and middle schools and high schools, like by this time of year, they're done with how chaotic lunchtime gets. So many schools revert to like silent lunches, just purely out of behavior management. Recess, which that ends in middle school anyway, and by the end of elementary school, that's not even an option. So maybe in the hallway later in elementary school at recess, you get what, 15 minutes? And even still, that's still like those homogenous groups of like only the people in your class and maybe the next class. Like none of that is actual choice socialization. And even then, it's controlled, it's limited, it's authority driven. A big problem that we see, and we're going to talk about this like hazing situation. And the reason that bullying is so prevalent is one of the biggest parts of learning how to be a person in the world, learning how to socialize, is learning how to deal with conflict. He has my toy, I want that toy. That's a conflict, okay, at the earliest level. And in a natural world, in a development where it's not so rigid, we practice, we experiment with things that work, how we can ask questions, who we go to for help when we've tried something and it's not working. That conflict resolution, those emotional regulation skills, all of that learning how to be a person in the world means dealing with other people. And that is naturally going to present conflict, and we learn how to deal with that. What happens in public schools, because again, the point and the focus in public school is not to socialize the kids. That's not it. It's to behavior manage them. So when your focus on a group of people, especially a forced collection of this homogenous group of people, young people, growing emotional people, when you're controlling and your job there is controlled and behavior management, you don't have space for conflict. So anytime conflict arises, it needs to be immediately handled and controlled. So in a public school situation, whether it's at recess or in the classroom, wherever it is, in that bubble, in that system, when there is conflict that arises, it is immediately swarmed with adults, okay, with authority figures. We are instantly either separating the kids, or we're telling them what to say, or we're controlling how to work it out, or we're punishing them. We're just putting the fire out immediately, because the only job is to make sure it doesn't spread, because we can't have that. That would be complete chaos in this system that we've created. Okay. But what happens in that moment? In those situations, regardless of the age, whether they're 5 years old in kindergarten fighting over a toy, or they're 16 years old in high school fighting over, something else, a social media post, whatever, it doesn't matter. If we immediately control it, what is lost in that moment? The opportunity to socialize is gone, because the kids don't get to practice having a conversation about it, saying what their feelings are, discussing it, trying something, asking for help. They don't even get the chance to ask for help. We take that away. And what that shows kids is that the only thing that matters is the hierarchy. If there's a problem, the authority figures fix it. And that creates two groups of people. What it creates is a Lord of the Flies situation, okay? That creates a group of kids or a group of people who will defer to the authority immediately, out of fear, out of their personality, out of their temperament. They will defer to the authority. And it creates a group of people who become the authority. And that is by also temperament, personality, safety, security, life experiences. And neither of those are wrong. It's created out of a system that is harmful and toxic and not actually socializing children. But when we create this system emotionally in these developing minds, it's kill or be killed. I either become the authority, a bully, or out of safety for myself, I become the bullied. And you can see where that goes. That creates a structure of bullies, which just is perpetuated and gets worse as kids get older, as that is reinforced around them. It's a big problem. It's one of the biggest problems of socialization in school is that there not only is it not real life socialization, it's also really negative, toxic social structure that's being enforced purely out of a desire and a need for behavior management over actual social skills. All right, the other issues with public school socialization that makes them harmful and toxic is that friendships are conditional. They're based purely on proximity, not on choice. Your options for who your friends are only those within your bubble because you don't have time to see anybody else or form genuine relationships based on things that you're interested in. Your friendship is purely based on proximity. How many of you as adults now are still genuine friends with people from high school? Probably not many. I like follow some of them on social media, but I'm not close with anyone from the years I was growing up. Now, of course, it's because we've all changed and moved on and had kids and we do our own things. But the friends that I've made by choice in adulthood, we are still living very different lives too. And yet they're still very close friends of mine because we became friends by choice, not by proximity. So even the friendships that your children might be making in school, what is the foundation of that friendship? The foundation is forced proximity and sometimes survival instincts, which not that those friendships can't be meaningful, but not nearly as meaningful and true as a friendship that was created by choice. Basically, what happens with this structure is that it creates this experience where kids learn to perform socially, not to be social. And as we talked about all last week, the major issue with public school is that everything in it becomes a performance. You do not learn to follow your own intrinsic motivation, to trust your gut, to do the things that feel good to you. What you are taught in public school is to perform yourself, perform academically, perform socially. You are learning, to perform for another person, for those extrinsic motivators, but you are being taught that that is internal motivation, that you should feel good to make someone else happy about the performance that you've put on. What this does is that it creates, as I mentioned, bullying hierarchies, this is getting worse over time, as the system begins to crumble from the inside. It's more and more, the Lord of the Flies analogy just becomes more true every year that I do this work, because the structure of the system is just fully falling apart, worse every day. But we're just like holding it up because it's all that we know. It's still our normal, even though we've fully, I think, recognized as a society that it's fatally flawed, and we're just holding it up because we don't know what else to do. We can't imagine another world, or we don't have the luxury of the time to imagine another world. And yet the ones being most harmed are the children in it. And we're not even talking about academics today. Okay. We are talking purely about that social emotional growth that is just that bullying structure, that bullying hierarchy that is being propped up in our system is extremely dangerous. It's extremely harmful to every child in that, to the bully and the bullied, because those often reverse roles and becomes worse as they get older. It also creates this in this performance, it creates masking, conformity, people pleasing, all of these survival strategies. Those kids that, well, actually, both sides of those kids, right? It's all a performance. Everything, every social engagement in a public school is just a performance. And with all of these expectations from people around us, and that creates this false personality, this false identity for most people. And especially for children who are neurodivergent, who have very strong personalities, where they really fight against that, that conformity. It really, really harms kids like that. I mean, it harms everybody, but we especially see it that way. We see masking, where they just pretend that they're fine. How many parents have had the experience of like, they go in for a parent-teacher conference and the teacher says something like, "Oh, your child is so calm and quiet and reserved in class." And then at home, they're just like a Tasmanian devil, and you just can't fathom that it would be a different kid. That's masking. That's not a good thing, right? That's conforming. That's masking. That's changing who they naturally are to please somebody else, to fit into this system that is immediately we're noticing these expectations of ourselves, and we either fight against them or we conform to them, and both become a problem. So, and if we continue doing that, we just become adults who feel anxious in social situations, who, are perpetual people pleasers, who continue masking. And that gets harder to undo, right? If you're somebody that masked your entire childhood, like just pretended you were fine when you weren't, or pretended you were someone that you were not to make others feel better, more comfortable. If you pretended and wore this like social mask in any way, if you do that for a really long period of time, you lose who's really there. You lose who's under that mask. And then if you even try to take that off as an adult, it's traumatizing. You've identified and introduced yourself, and in the world around you became this person with this mask on. And to take it off, not only do you not even feel like yourself, but it's really hard to get other people to accept that, to embrace that, to change who they thought you were. It's very, very damaging to a human. And when we know that the definition of socialization is to learn how to be a person in the world, how can we say that putting a young person, a developing person, in this false and forced Truman's world bubble where nothing is real, nothing is the same as the outside world, and create these toxic little environments for them to like have to survive through and then kick them out of the bubble? What are we expecting to happen? I think you could probably look around the world and see a lot of hurt adults walking around wearing masks, people pleasing, conforming. If they weren't like that, what would our world be? So it's really, really important when someone asks us, what about socialization? These are things that are important to know and to have as conversation topics, and especially for yourself, because as we talked about last week, when you're going through this healing and deschooling work, these things are going to come up for you. You are going to have these moments of like, oh, geez, my friend or my kid doesn't have a friend right now and everybody else has friends, and that worries me, right? I'm fearful that my kid won't have anybody, or my kid, whatever. I'm fearful. Maybe I should have. These are the times we come back to these conversations. Just because something is normal does not make it right, does not make it true, does not make it best, does not make it valuable. And the more people start to have these conversations, the more people embrace unschooling and this rejection of the systemic schooled mindset, the faster we can change the world around us. Okay, so let's talk about real socialization, the other side of the coin. So we know what socialization looks like in school. We know what it's doing, and we know that it isn't actual socialization and that it is very toxic and harmful and creates all kinds of ongoing trauma for children and then into their adulthood. So what's the other side of that? What does real socialization look like? So the beautiful thing about unschooling, which is just all life is learning, right? The beautiful thing about that is that it honors a child's natural temperament and personality. Nothing about unschooling is about force or taking away a child's autonomy or controlling their experience in the world. We actively don't try to control their experience in the world. Therefore, they get to learn how to be a person in the world by real experiences. And everyone is not the same. We don't all fit into that perfect little bubble in the center of only participating when we realize that it's important. Some people thrive socially. Some people are extroverts that love being with other people. And you can't take that out of a person, not when you believe in their natural development. My oldest is like that. He is the most social and extroverted person I've ever met. And I will admit, as someone who is not that way, that was a challenge when he was younger, when I was in charge of making sure he had those social outlets. That was challenging for me, not because I didn't know where to find those situations for him, but because I didn't enjoy that. But that's part of unschooling, is being that guide, being that person that sees the needs of the child and gives them what they need in that moment. But because I spent his early years honoring that natural desire of his to go outside, to be in nature, to be with people, to be out of the house, doing things and talking to people, now he is fully independent and loves going out with people. He's almost 15 years old. He was up and out the door before I was even awake this morning. He had plans with one of his friends. They were off on a bike ride. They were out, and it's a school day, right? His other friends, most of his friends are in school right now. But the little group of friends that he has cultivated, many of whom he's like proselytized unschooling to their families, this bubble that he's created of friends of all different walks of life, he is out there doing things, being social, real socialization. He has friends of all ages, probably 5 or 6 years on either side of his age, that he does different things with. Some of his friends he goes fishing with. Some of his friends are for him to do bike stuff with. He has all of these things. I've shared recently, he went out and got a job. He is that person naturally. And because he was allowed to develop that in a way on his own timeline, and there were years where he was super shy and nervous about it, because I could see that in him, I was able to cultivate that naturally. And now he is fully out there doing the things he needs to do. And then there are people who prefer solitude. That's me. Yes, you see me here, but this is my job, this is my gift, and this is my mission. So I'll show up here and I'll show up live and I'll talk and I'll teach and I'll share. But when I'm not doing this, I am in my house, in pajamas, alone, looking like a troll, or being with my kids. And I am unconcerned with what is going on outside of my little bubble because I prefer solitude. My middle son is like that to a T. He is alone 90% of the time in his room and happy about it. And I don't feel like I have to change him because that's naturally who he is. He has friends online that he chats with. He is on a soccer team and participates joyfully and socially in his soccer experiences. And then he goes home and he wants to be alone. And he is in there reading and doing art and learning, but he's happy that way. And we can embrace that instead of labeling him as shy or introverted like it's a bad thing or doesn't participate in class. He doesn't have to walk around with those labels. And my oldest doesn't have to walk around with labels of can't ever shut up because they get to just naturally be who they are in the real world. And now I was blessed with two extreme examples of temperament and personality. Most people fall somewhere in the middle of that. Sometimes they want to go out and socialize, and sometimes they want to be alone. And when we can allow them to just naturally be who they are, there's no problems. They get to just be that. Since public school focuses on the standardization, which is making everyone the same, it almost like not only does it label anyone that is not in that perfect realm, but it pathologizes it. They make it a problem. If you're too talkative, that's a problem. If you're not talkative enough, that's a problem. We make these problems where they don't exist. And it sticks with us. We all know that we were that kid. It's not a secret how people feel about you. How does it feel to be that kid who wants to talk and is constantly told to be quiet? How does it feel to be the kid who doesn't want to talk and doesn't want to share their opinion in a group of other people? And yet the person who's talking just the right amount is constantly being praised for it, and you're ignored or labeled. None of that creates healthy socialization skills. We need to be real about this. We have to release these fears and beliefs and habits that we carry around about what socialization is and how it develops and what it looks like. A child liking solitude is not a problem. A child wanting one friend instead of 10 friends is not a problem. A child wanting 10 friends instead of one friend is not a problem. We don't have to make problems where they don't exist. When we step outside of that factory, none of it matters anymore. Let those fears go. Your child is okay. The way they want to show up in the world is okay. And if they're leaving that school system, they're likely traumatized this way. And they need some time to figure out who they are again. They might have been masking, conforming, hiding, pretending. It takes a while to undo that. So if you're in this space where you can't quite tell if your child is being anxious, withdrawn, like they don't want to go out and do anything, it's okay. They'll be okay. It takes a while to recover from that. Help them reinforce who they are. So let's move that into the how to. If I am choosing unschooling, how do I make sure that my child is getting socialization skills and socialization opportunities? The first thing we want to think about is skills, and those are modeled and practiced. And it doesn't matter who they're modeled and practiced with, because the skill is just the practice of conflict resolution. Do you let your kids make decisions, or do you control everything for them? Because in the practice of decision making is how we build social skills. Do we help our child by setting boundaries? Do we model boundary setting, and do we encourage boundary setting? Do we model decision making and encourage decision making? Do we model conflict resolution and encourage conflict resolution? Do we model emotional regulation, and do we encourage emotional regulation? That is how we help our children develop real social skills. We model them, which means we have to practice them. And a lot of us are still conditioned from how we dealt with things growing up, how we masked, how we conformed, how we people pleased. We have to make sure that we are doing the work, which is why the deschooling process is so important. Are we doing the work to effectively model to our children what being a person in the world looks like? Are we modeling that for them? And are we giving them opportunities to practice those emotional skills Social and emotional skills go together. If you are emotionally dysregulated, you cannot be social because that's not going to work in the world, right? We have to learn those skills of emotional regulation, conflict resolution, how to recognize when you do feel like being with people and when you don't, and how to set that boundary. I don't feel like being with people right now. How do I how do I express that politely? How do I let people know this isn't a good time for me? How do I seek out those opportunities when it is a good time for me? How do we model and give opportunities to practice real social skill development? And then how do we give them opportunities? And the beautiful thing there is that there are so many more opportunities than in a public school because that's all just like forced and controlled. In the real world, there's endless opportunities. You can socialize with your child. That's not a bad thing. Siblings, cousins, neighbors, sports teams, music lessons, art lessons, library time. We talked last week about how to get community involvement. If your child wants to learn something, how do you seek out mentorships? One of the kids that homeschools with my son this morning, he met with an older man to help teach him welding skills. That's socialization. He's 14, the man's probably like 65. And they're developing this mentor relationship. I've talked before about how my son meets with this like 20 something young guy to take him out and teach him local ecology. All of those are real opportunities for socialization, mixed age groups, interest driven. If you have the same interest as someone else, the age is irrelevant. That's how real relationships are developed. And also just the practical ways that you communicate with people, the grocery store, at a restaurant, making phone calls, talking to the mailman. Like there's so many real world ways, online friendships, gaming. There's so many real ways to practice those skills and develop relationships. And I think a lot of times because the adults are so wrapped up in the fears of it, we put all this like unnecessary pressure on our children to be social if it isn't even something they're seeking out or if they don't even need help with it. So we have to make sure that we are first and foremost removing the like those fears and those beliefs about school being the only way to have a friendship. And this is especially true if you're transitioning your child from public school to an unschooled situation, is to not act like those friendships from school are now like defunct, right? Like they have to disappear. But you might find that, and that's part of this deschooling transition, those friendships that were false, that were only based on forced proximity, those friendships might disintegrate. And that's going to feel like a loss. But if it's only happening because they were like, you could still seek out, you probably live nearby that person. So encourage after school time for those kids to get together, but don't expect that that friendship is going to last outside of that forced proximity. And that can be hard to let go of that, to heal from that. So we have to expect and anticipate some of these experiences that feel hard in the moment, but in the long run, perhaps is more healing for your child to develop real relationships that aren't just based on being near one another or being like put in this traumatic experience together. Following their interest is the best way to do that, to seek out those real life opportunities, whether that's online, whether that's in person, whether that's with other kids in a group, whether that's with just one other adult in a mentorship. You know your child best. Some kids work better in a group with other kids. Some kids work better one-on-one with an adult. My oldest, believe it or not, if there's something that he's learning that's new, if he's not going to be one of the best at it, he would prefer to have a one-on-one experience with a mentor, with an adult. He would rather have that adult relationship helping him learn something than be in a group with other kids and not know that he's the best at something or fully qualified. My middle kid would rather be in a group with other kids, no matter what, whether he's good at something or not. He would rather By the way, he's the introverted one. If there's something he's doing that he's seeking out a learning opportunity or whatever, he would rather be in a group with other kids than just one-on-one. And all of this is, I know this because I observe the kids, because we have embraced that unschooling philosophy. All life is learning. My job is not to tell them what is important to learn. My job is to model being a lifelong learner, to model these adult skills, these skills of being a person in the world, and to know and be connected with my children. That's my job. To know those nuances, to observe and to pay attention and to see how they interact, and then to prepare and plan around that based on what they are showing me, what their needs are, what their interests are. And the more you practice this observation, which we talked about in Unschooling 101, by the way, the more you practice this, the easier it is. It's very innate. Now, my youngest is just 5. I haven't quite, he's very social. He's not like shy or anything. He loves to talk to other people. Whereas at that age, my older 2 didn't. So I'm not sure what we'll get out of him yet, but we just kind of let him do what he wants. And we'll figure it out. Mixed age opportunities are always fantastic for developing that skill. But the most important thing you can do is support, not force. The opportunities are there. You can present the opportunities. You can try something out, letting your child know at all times, hey, let's try this thing out. If you hate it, fine, we won't go back. Or if you really, really hate it, let's have a signal we can leave. Or just, options, not obligations. That's the best way to put it, right? We have all of these options for you to engage with people if that's what you want. The option is always there, even though, and I'll give you an example of this with my middle kid who's super introverted and prefers, unless it's soccer, prefers to not be involved. Even though I know that 99.9% of the time his answer is going to be no, I always offer. Once a month, I'll go to him and say, hey, is there anything you really want to, is there anything you want to do? And I pay attention to his observations, to what he's showing me, right? Right recently I had this conversation with him. Hey, do you want to, I noticed you were super into digital art. Are you interested in work? You want me to find someone that can help you learn some of those skills? You want to take an online class, meet up? No. Okay. But the option's there. Let me know if you change your mind. Or, hey, soccer season's over. You don't have practices for a while. Do you want to meet one-on-one with a trainer for a while? You want me to get some of your friends together and lead some small groups? The option's there. Okay, if you change your mind, let me know. There's always the option. And every now and then, maybe 1 out of 30 times, he'll come back later and say, hey, remember when you said we could do this thing? Could we do that? It's always an option. It's never an obligation. And I get to model those skills to him all the time. Okay. I see there's lots of good questions and I am going to take them, but I'm going to get through one more point because I do want to lead before I end the teaching part of this. I want to give you phrases that you can say, and I'm going to put these on I have them typed up in front of me and I'm going to put them on a social media post soon today. So you can save them and memorize them because I think that you're very likely to hear at some point, what about socialization? But also, not only are you likely to hear that just in the general public, as we move into the holiday season, I think it's very likely that this topic will come up if you are still in these situations where you haven't solidified boundaries with extended family members around unschooling and homeschooling. So here are some things that you can say to answer and respond to the question, what about socialization? So there's 4 different approaches. So whichever fits the moment, because you really are going to be able to feel the vibe, right? Is this person asking what about socialization because they want to unschool their kids? They're happy about what they see you're doing or they're inspired by it. And yet they know that their partner is going to ask them that question, or that's a fear they still have, right? Is this a genuine question, or is this coming from a place of super whoa, I've never thought about it. I'll be fully honest with you. The woman that asked my husband, how will they learn how to deal with bullies? She was not being judgmental. She was not being malicious. That truly was from a place of such deep conditioning that she couldn't fathom not putting a child through that to help them get to the other side. So that question was from a genuine place of curiosity and just conditioning. And then there are the questions that full well is a judgmental question. And the the point of it will be, of your response will be a boundary setting. So the first one is like a reframe. And this is for someone who has that, just like, I'm super conditioned, I can't fathom you doing something different. So this phrase could be, we prefer real life socialization over forced socialization. My child gets to spend time with people of all ages and interests. And that just helps that person reframe their belief. And that could end the conversation, or it could go into a conversation where you could talk about a lot of what I talked about today, where you're opening up the option to have a real discussion about what socialization actually is. Another one with that is very factual, which is public school isn't actually designed for social development. It's designed for behavior management, and unschooling gives my kids authentic relationships. So that's kind of the same thing, right? It's another reframe, but maybe in a more confrontational type of way, where you're just flat out saying public school isn't giving the kids what they need. That is my intention. The next one is if you have someone that is, you can tell, like, it's a genuine curiosity. They are concerned about this. Like, I want to unschool my kids and I'm scared they won't have friendships. So this one is great if you have a personal example. And so you could say something like, my kids make lots of friends through their interests. And then you could list them, right? Soccer, gaming online, parks, travel, whatever classes we're a part of, lessons. And you could say something like, their social life is richer now than it ever was when they were in public school. So anytime you can give a personal example is super helpful. And that's why I tell you guys stories about my kids, right? It always helps to hear someone that's ahead of the curve a little bit. It helps to calm your fears. And then the last one is a boundary setting one, which is, I know that this is coming from a place of judgment. And I'm going to also preface this for you. If you are going into any situations this holiday season where you know that this is coming, I want you to understand it is not your responsibility to make other people feel good about the choices that you've made for your kids. It's also not your responsibility to educate them on those choices. You did this work. You watched these videos, you followed me, you followed other people, you read books, you researched. You did the work to make an educated, intentional, emotional, intuitive decision about how to raise and educate your children. It is not your job to make other people do that. Now, again, we've covered already, if someone is coming with a genuine interest, of course, you could help them out. It's still not your responsibility, but you could help share information that you found useful to you in that process. But especially someone coming at it from purely a place of wanting to judge your choices, and we often see this with extended family members, it's not your job to educate them. It's not your job to make them feel okay with it. Okay? So boundary setting is very clear here. So around socialization, a boundary could be simply, we're not worried about socialization. We see that happen naturally every day, period. And then I don't wish to discuss it any further if that's necessary. I'm not worried about that. Thanks though, right? Set the boundary. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. Again, I'll put that on my social media so you can save it to have, for those moments. So there are a couple questions in the chat I want to go through, but I am going to start with, I'll do these questions first, and then we'll get into my Bridge Academy questions. Looks like you guys were having a good chat amongst yourselves. That's good. I thought I saw questions. I could have sworn I saw. Okay, here it is. What do you do with a child who shuts down around others? She has a friend, but going to the dentist, etc., is basically impossible. So I would need a little bit more information about the child specifically. So I think your name is familiar. If you're a Bridge family, you could maybe throw that in a question, or you could reach out in the help desk and I can answer. But if this is a situation where your child was in public school and has transitioned home, it could just be some held over trauma. It could also just be that's a phase some kids go through. Again, my oldest, who's super, super social now, that wasn't always true. There were moments where getting him to go anywhere was a whole thing. So you just have to really know your child, right? Okay, the dentist is the thing you have to do, right? So if it is a situation where we do have to go to this place, then for that, it's going to be whatever the leading up to the transition is to help her get ready for that. Do we watch videos about what happens at the dentist? Do we go visit the dentist before even the appointment just to like see where the office is, like figuring out what's the anxiety here? And then, but if it's more of a choice thing, like, do you want to go to the grocery store with me or not? Then you can you don't have to go, right? Options over obligations. And then we're going to figure out why, like where is that anxiety coming from, right? You have to kind of figure out the trigger. My son is in the chat. Charlie, you can call your dad for money right now. Okay. Sorry. Any other questions here? Okay. Oh, follow up. I'm very introverted myself, so I definitely understand pushing her would backfire. Okay. I guess I'm just looking for new ideas. We do try to give her opportunities without forcing it, but is it enough? Okay. So yes, right. So we were on the right track there. Like it might just be her natural. Yeah. And I didn't see the age. Oh, she's 6. Okay. Oh my God. No force. And again, okay. We're on the right track with this. 6 years old. She does not have to be forced to social situations. Please don't. That's just going to create the same thing, right? You're going to create that masking, that conformity, that people pleasing at 6 years old. Absolutely. Let her, if she doesn't want to go somewhere, don't make her go somewhere. If it is a thing that is, we have to go to the dentist, that's a thing, prepare, deal with the anxieties around that, right? But no, if she's 6 years old and just doesn't want to go do things, don't make her do things. There's no need for that. Okay, let me pop into bridge questions. Okay, so some of the screen is all weird. Some of these are from a couple weeks ago because we didn't have the traditional live calls, but we'll answer them anyway. Okay. Sorry, I was reading this in advance. I think I probably I'll answer it anyway. So I'm a mom of a single child. So it feels harder to unschool because they don't have siblings. So this is kind of socially related. Basically, this parent is asking, they live in a city and there's no homeschooled kids in the neighborhood. We do a lot outdoors. I do an unschooling approach with trying to be a mentor and observing his obsessions and getting him activities that align. So I think we're kind of on the same page here, right? Like this is sounding more to me like you are concerned that he isn't getting enough social outings and he's probably totally fine with how many that he's getting, right? So for this, I don't know the child's age. Actually, I'm going to look up real quick. I can look that up. I feel like this name is familiar. I feel like it is a younger child. Oh, no, older. Okay, 8th grade. So at 8th grade, have a conversation with him. Do you feel like you're getting enough? Is there more you want to do? Right? It isn't really on you at this point your job is to model those social opportunities, to observe what is going on with your child. You know, is he seeking out more of those, asking for those, showing you more desire to be out doing other things? Or is he perfectly fine, right? What can you do outside of school hours with other friends, with other people? But at that age, have the conversation. Like, is there more you want to do? Let's make it happen. How can I help you with that? Again, last week during that Unschooling 101, we really talked about those like learning progressions of those age, like the development that happens, you know. Yes, when they're very young, we have to imagine that there's scaffolding all outside of the building of who they are, right? We're like holding them up and doing a lot for them. And then in the middle school years, we start to take some of that away so that they can really develop these skills on their own, so that as they get older, we can just keep removing that scaffolding so they're super independent. So at that age, we really want to be having those conversations. Hey, you got to share with me. What is it that you want? Let's be open. Let's be honest. A follow-up question to that from the same mom was, has anyone tried to unschool but realized their child needed more structure? So this, I'm not going to take this question specifically because it is from a couple weeks ago and we have done a lot of other conversations around routines. So if that was your question, please go watch the last couple of videos I did just on here, like talking about like that transition of adding structure. The aligned homeschool routines workshop will absolutely help you build that structure in. Again, this is a myth, right? That unschool means no structure. That's not at all what that means. We still need and thrive off of routines. And those like touch points through the day. So the aligned homeschool routines workshop will definitely help you with that. So will Unschooling 101. Okay. My son is dyslexic and in 5th grade. I'm conflicted about giving him grades. Then don't. Um, he works hard and gives great effort, but if he ever goes back to public school, he will most likely struggle to get C's. So on my first learning log, I gave him mostly B's. I don't care about grades, and maybe I'm overthinking this. If you think you're overthinking it, you're probably overthinking it. But I swing from being realistic to feeling guilty. Should I be giving him C's, or am I shortchanging him by not giving him A's? I have no idea at this stage what his future will look like for high school or college. What would you do? In 5th grade, it genuinely doesn't matter. If your concern is high school or college, don't worry about grades until high school, because nothing transfers. Like, no school will ever care what a grade was in 5th grade. Like, they won't. Even at high school, if you transfer him to public school in high school, they're not going to care if he had any grades in 5th grade. I literally, before this call, was creating a transcript for a child that is going to, they're in Bridge Academy now. They're transferring. They're going to try public school. They're in 9th grade right now. So they're going to start like freshman year, mid-year. And we asked the school, do you want all of their academic records? And they literally said, no, just 9th grade. Like, they didn't even want to see them, only what the child is currently doing in the school year of 9th grade. So it totally does not matter right now, unless it matters to the child. Okay. If he's doing the best he can, that's an A, right? Like, to me, that's, if you are trying, you're putting in the effort, you deserve to get rewarded for that effort, period. And then you also mentioned if he goes back to public school for sports. So I just want to say there, I'll have to look at where you live to answer this question, but feel free, if this was your question, to reach out to me. He doesn't necessarily have to attend public school to play sports. Maybe he wants to, so that's a different conversation, but your child can almost always still play sports, even as a homeschooler or a bridge student. We can help with that. And again, like, if he goes back to school, he'll struggle to get C's. I mean, you don't know that, right? Like, I think you might be projecting a little bit here of your fears around that. If there is motivation to attend school, and I'm only saying this because I've witnessed this, a child who struggled with a lot of that academic type stuff at home, made the decision to attend school or college or whatever because of a motivating factor. If for your son, that's, I want to attend public school to be a part of the experience, to play sports, that motivation is there to figure it out. And there's a big gap between 5th grade and 9th grade. So definitely don't discount his abilities. Focus on what you control right now. If he's diagnosed dyslexic and you know that, then help him with the supports to be successful. Change all of the font on your devices to the dyslexic font, the Open Dyslexic, and give him that support that he needs. Help him, find if writing is hard because of his dyslexia, if maybe there's some dysgraphia there too, how can he, use some supportive devices? Can he use talk to text to share his ideas instead? Like, what other ways can we encourage and motivate that what we're focusing on at this age is the how. How do I fit into the world around me? How do I solve problems? How do I ask for help? How do I ask questions? How? This is the how years, right? Early on, it's the why. These years, it's the how. And then we move into the why, the what's and the where's, right? We're figuring out what we want. What do I want? Where do I go to get it? Who do I ask for help? These middle school years are the hows. How do I do all of these things? And you give them those tools. So that's what we're working on there. I need to write something down because I just had an idea. There we go. Yeah. Okay. It's the brain of the creative. All right. Um, mm, Oh, that was a very personal question with names and everything. But generally, the question here is about work permits. Yes, we can help you with your work permit. So there are some states where the school district still legally has to give you the work permit for all kids, even if they're homeschooled. But for most cases in states where a minor needs a work permit, we can give it to you. So you just have to reach out. Anytime you need a work permit for your bridge students, just reach out in the help desk and ask, and we'll let you know what you need to do. Okay. My 6-year-old loves copying words and tracing letters. I'm now wondering how important or not important cursive might be. Is there a benefit to learning it? Thank you. Right now, I would not be focusing on cursive at that age. I think it's very personal, right? Like that's a weird thing I don't really have an opinion on. I think that it is important to be able to read cursive because so many old documents are written in cursive. And I think it's just a useful skill to see that and be able to read it. So, do I write in cursive? Not really. Like for speed, sometimes I guess I write in like a hybrid of print and cursive. So I think this is so dependent on the child. At 6 years old, where he's learning about it, unless he like really, really loves writing right now, that you think maybe getting a cursive workbook would be fun and he could trace it, sure. But it's not something that I would force, certainly. And again, I think it's good for kids to, when they're older, to learn how to read old documents, but that's really the only reason I see it being important. My 15-year-old son is neurodiverse and has social anxiety. He enjoys family get-togethers where he feels comfortable. Otherwise, he is home. I think he would like to do more and isn't able to. He says he doesn't want to be with other people. Do I leave him be for right now? Am I doing enough for him? So this is the challenging part of like, do I intervene when, as the parent, I do see that there's a desire, or do I leave it alone and wait for him to ask? But within that realm of like, that he's neurodiverse and has social anxiety. So is he ever going to ask? And that's really kind of where you have to like, you very personally have to deal with walking that fine line. I think, are you doing enough for him? Absolutely. The fact that you are aware that you're having these conversations, that you're asking these questions, that you are still finding those opportunities for him, like he enjoys family get-togethers, great. Is that still all that he might need for social development? Sure, right? If he's having open conversation, he's learning how to be a person in the world. It doesn't really matter who that's with. Those social skills can still be developed, even if it's just with family. So I think more so for someone who is neurodiverse, for someone that has anxiety, especially social anxiety, the most important skill that we can give them is understanding their own emotional regulation and boundary setting. And so giving him opportunities, even within family settings, to say things like, hey, I know we're just with, your cousins right now, but if you get tired and you want to leave, just let me know and we'll leave, no problem, right? Giving him the tools, even in those very safe places, to speak up for himself, to recognize those symptoms he's having of like, wow, I'm like, really don't want to be here anymore. It's time for me to go. And I want to do that before it becomes a problem. Those are the things where we're really going to be working on the skills more than anything. And then with the opportunities, I think with him, what I would recommend here is really, like I said before, options, not obligations. So he wants to do more and isn't able to. So I think the more you let him know that that's an option, the more he hears, you can try this, you can try this, you can try this. He might say no 100 times, but 101 time, the 101st, he might say, okay, let's give it a whirl. And sometimes it's just the like safety of knowing, all right, mom's going to offer and I can say no, and there's no judgment, right? So you don't have to leave him be by completely ignoring and never offering again. As you see he's interested in things, as you see opportunities present themselves, hey, do you want to try this? Hey, I'm going here. Do you want to go with me? No obligation. You can say no. It's not a big deal, right? Like just offer, offer, offer. No obligation, no stress, no pressure. Even just knowing that those options exist might be enough for him to be like, okay, I could do that if I wanted to, and I don't want to, and that's okay. And that is developing a skill too. Okay, last question that came in. Actually, I'll answer this question here real quick. My daughter's is 10 and in 5th grade. How will testing be if we're in a state that requires it as a bridge family? So if you are in a state that requires testing, so I'm going to assume the state that you're in. I won't say it out loud, but I'm going to assume if we have told you that testing is required, because we will tell you, if that is true, we will give you the information. It is very stress-free. We've made it as simple as possible. But we will reach out to you like a few months before that test has to happen to start preparing for it. So don't worry about that. Okay, last question that came in. My son does not like sports. He is a homebody for the most part, but he does enjoy spending time with our family. We have a huge family full of aunts and uncles and lots of cousins, and we see them every other week. Other family members have said we should force him to play sports so he can socialize more, but he is the first to make friends on the playground. He talks to everyone in the stores, doctors' offices, restaurants, etc. Is pushing him into sports when he doesn't want to really going to benefit him? I'm going to pause for a moment, and I am going to let someone that is watching live answer that question for me based on everything we said today. Should this mom, at the encouragement of her extended family, force her child to play sports to socialize when he does not like playing sports? What do you think? Somebody answer for me. You guys are a quiet group. No, the answer is no. A resounding, loud, big capital letters. No, do not force him. Again, hey, you could play football if you want. Your cousins are playing basketball. You can try it if you want. That's it. Do you force a child to play sports? Of course you do not do that. There is so much harm that can be done. And it doesn't even, you didn't even need to give me the caveat of when he's on the playground, he's really social with people. It doesn't even matter if he was or not. A 6-year-old does not have to be forced to be social. And you should not force a child into a physical experience that they don't want to be a part of. That's taking away a lot of autonomy. That's not just a social issue. That's also a physical issue. Not to mention, kids, and at that age, it doesn't matter as much, but as the mom of a kid who genuinely is the sports kid, it is, when that's true, right? And I had my oldest, he tried it. He played basketball for a few seasons and he participated, but he ultimately decided he wasn't interested in continuing that. So, there are, of course, rec leagues and everything. But when you have a kid on a team who doesn't want to be there, especially a team sport, that's not creating good social skills. That's actually just reinforcing some of those bully structures, because it's going to be frustrating for the other kids who do want to be there to have to participate with a kid who has no interest, no desire in participating, in getting better, in engaging, in developing their skills. It's frustrating for the parent. It's frustrating for the child. It's frustrating for the coach. And it's hard to just try out and leave. Right? It's not a class or a one-off workshop or something where you can be they weren't really interested in it. If you commit to a season of basketball and you force the kid to go to all of the game, not that you can't leave, whatever, they can drop off. But if you force it, you're just it's just this yuck scenario for everyone involved. Nobody wants to be a part of that. So no, definitely not. Do not force your child. And now with all of these extended friends and family or family members that are telling you that they should go to sports, now you can say, we're not worried about socialization. He socializes as he needs to. Thanks anyway. Boundary. All right, guys. That is all I have for you today. That was every question that came in. As always, you can submit, Bridge Academy families can submit questions through the question link that's in the portal on the homepage, and we answer those every Friday. If something urgent comes up between Fridays, we are available through the help desk and email. However, so for Bridge families, Staff is out of the office next week for Thanksgiving. If you have a super urgent request, you can put urgent in the email subject, but please make sure it's actually urgent because we are taking the week off. There will not be a live call next Friday because of the holiday. However, when we return next Friday, or the next Friday, December 5th, it will be a guest host week, and I'm really excited about that. We're having Ruth from Joyful Maths with Ruth come on, and we're going to talk about math in an unschooling way. So Ruth is a former math teacher who has embraced the belief that math can absolutely be learned in an unschooling manner. So I am really stoked to bring an expert in and talk about that. So Bridge families, drop all of your math related questions into our question form so we can share those with Ruth and make sure your questions get answered. And if you are not a Bridge family and you want to watch anyway, we'll be here at noon Eastern time on Friday, December 5th. All right, guys. Last couple things before I go. Unschooling 101, if you want to get that, which trust me, you do want to get that. It is available still for free with the Grow Your Natural Learner Pay What You Wish. I will send that out in a replay email. We're just not promoting that anymore, but it's still available. You can get that in there. If you are not interested in that and you just want to buy Unschooling 101 by itself, that'll be out probably on Monday. We're putting it all together now. Otherwise, we'll see you guys. Have a good Thanksgiving if you celebrate. Otherwise, enjoy your week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.